Welcome to the Stronger Together podcast, brought to you by Sandpoint Strength and Conditioning. I'm your coach, Kenny Marquardt, and I'm here with Ryan Stonebraker, affectionately known as Stoney.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
You are one of the most beloved members in the gym.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah, by all.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's good.
No,
I think
it's good
people
to
are going
be
to be
here.
jacked to hear you. Your sultry, smooth baritone. You might be.
Well, I'm a Neanderthal, so I can't help it. I'm a big guy.
That's what I think one of my favorite things about you is that you look like somebody I should be terrified of, and that wouldn't be. I know, right? You're not. You're not at all. I should be probably afraid of you, but that's not how you present.
Why?
You got a bit of a history, a bit of a background.
That's true.
Yeah, I'm sure you have. Whatever. I wish I could recite Liam Neeson's specific set of tools that can make people like you regret whatever that was.
Well, I don't know. I'm a humble being. Been through a lot, seen a lot. And so that makes you even more humble, right?
Yeah.
You get beaten down a little bit.
Yeah, totally. I think that's a good point. Yeah, for sure.
I
think that's good for people. I think that ego squashing through
Sure.
experience is a good thing.
Yeah, I've been spent my life trying to ego squash for sure.
Your own ego squash.
Going back, like my dad was a Zen Buddhist. So
really,
I grew up in Buddhism. So really focusing on not letting my ego take control of myself, which it does, of course. I mean, we all fall into our own gap and our own bullshit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I grew up in Zen.
No way.
Yeah.
How's it? I mean, that's not common. Tell me about that.
Well, my family was very multi-religious. So I grew up next to a Catholic church. My mom was Jewish. My father was a Zen Buddhist. My family are the Mormon pioneers, LDS. So a lot of my family's, LDS. And then one of my brothers was in a cult for a while. So yeah, I was exposed to all this, and my wife's a Baptist.
Whoa.
And I would, I've been exposed to all that.
Yeah. How did your dad get into Buddhism?
He rejected the LDS church.
Yeah.
And then he's a really fascinating guy. I take care of him now. He was one of the guys in the 60s. He was a social worker that they used to test LSD on, like the government, but through school. So he went to UCLA. So if you know some of those stories about those guys, he was one of those people that they gave him a lot of LSD, and it was before it was illegal. And that was part of his education, believe it or not.
Ah, wow.
Yeah.
A lot of education, I imagine, happened there for him.
For sure. So that, transpired to him becoming a Zen Buddhist for a long time, and just, really kind of focusing on that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Then his rejection of the LDS, I mean, was that a familial issue? You know what I mean? Pulling out of that would probably have been not.
Yeah. My grandfather was a World War II vet, and they moved from Utah at one point. So they lived in Colville, Utah, kind of by Park City. My family was some of the early founders or settlers in the Salt Lake City area, homesteaders.
Yeah. And
so Colville, Utah, if you ever go there, there's the whole cemetery is Stonebreakers and Cleverleys, which I'm related to both of them. So my family is, part of that. But also on the other side of that, I know my dad was at one of the weddings, and you can't go into the temple if you're not a Mormon, like a good standing Mormon.
Yeah. And,
when someone comes up to him and tries to recruit him, and I love this story. So he goes, this guy goes, hey, think about joining the church. He goes, no, I was part of the church. And my dad, he goes, what's your name? And he goes, Ken Stonebraker. And the guy's like, I'm sorry, it was your father, Roy Stonebraker, twins with Ron Stonebraker. My dad's like, yeah. He goes, I'm sorry I asked. So we have a very, very devout LDS family. And then we have the people that aren't. And we're all good together. But
wait, so the background, why he said, I'm sorry I asked?
Because my grandfather was nuts, just crazy brawler. And so was his brother. And later in life, they kind of turned back to the church. But yeah, there's a lot of knowledge of my family, at least in the old days back there.
That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
I love this. This is great.
So
yeah, I'm so glad I didn't know this about you. We chat all the time.
Yeah, we chat all the time.
Yeah.
But usually we just pick on each other. So this is the first time we've had a real conversation.
Not surface level,
deep.
Poking at each other.
Deep, yeah. Well, that's, I enjoy that.
Yeah, same. And then your brother in a cult. I want to know, can you?
Well, my brother, very good guy. He's not anymore. He lives on San Juan Island.
He's not a good guy anymore?
He's a great guy.
Okay.
He's a great guy. But he was part of this group, and I don't know too much about it. I think it started in Malibu and then ended up in Montana by Livingston.
I cut this place.
Yeah. So he was part of that.
The Church of Universal and Triumphant.
Yes.
Yep.
And then
I've met many members.
He was, I think, like helped with cooking. He's a chef too.
Yep.
Really fascinating guy. But at some point decided to leave that world, which is good.
Did he live underground for any period of time?
I haven't gotten to too much detail with him about it. But I could totally see how it could happen.
Yeah.
And he was around that group in Los Angeles for a while.
Yeah.
Before they moved out there. So he lived in Livingston for quite a while.
They were in Santa Barbara.
Yes.
Sold their property there and then bought thousands and thousands of acres in Montana.
Yes. In Livingston.
Yeah. Just outside of Livingston. It's in Gardner.
Yes.
Yeah. And then built underground bunkers, which are still in existence.
Oh, they were paranoid. Yeah.
Yeah.
They were totally paranoid.
They predicted the end of the world in like 96.
Yeah. Something like that. And that's probably when he was in there.
Yeah. And then they lost a lot of folks, as you can imagine. When they came out, they looked out their little periscopes and were like, well,
this isn't going to work out. Yeah.
So
we don't have enough ARs.
Remember,
we're not ready to go.
Remember how you sold all your stuff and moved here because of the end of the world? Yeah. Sorry, we were wrong.
Right.
It's going to be, I think then they tried to kick it out a couple more years and say 5 more years. We screwed up the telling or whatever. Yeah. Crazy. Yeah. Not crazy, but interesting.
Yeah. So I've always been fascinated by that and organizations and good and bad. Good and bad. That's something I've always just been, even going through graduate school, I studied conflict resolution and just really been fascinated. And then, career wise, spent a lot of time dealing with everything from, I was in law enforcement, dealing with gangs, everything from gangs in law enforcement to counter-terrorism world. That's what I spent most of my life dealing with that.
Wait a second. So can we step back just because I know your story, but everybody else probably doesn't. So
I started my career in Tulare County Sheriff's Office. I was 21 years old. I, had a busy, I was an athlete as a young man, played rugby internationally. But I really wanted to get into law enforcement. I really wanted to help people and kind of deal with difficult situations.
Yeah.
And I was just drawn to that.
Yeah.
And so I started in this little county in Central Valley, California. And I spent 4 years there. Much of that time was in custody, dealing with, and then really kind of being immersed in seeing what gangs do. And part of my role as a classification officer was to kind of look at organizations, how they were, they could be threatened or, maybe a shot caller, and then really kind of, and the Central Valley of California for gangs in California is really the centerpiece because you have all these different factions in that particular county competing for territory. So it makes it a kind of a precarious area.
Yeah.
So, typically the North and the South, Hispanic gangs, Mexican gangs.
Yeah.
But a variety of other, Caucasian gangs, black gangs, all of it, Asian gangs, all there in the same place.
Competing over what? Like what's the competition?
Territory. Back in those days was clandestine methamphetamine labs.
Oh, okay.
So I started getting into intelligence work because I was like, first of all, just fascinated by organizations of people.
Yeah.
And nefarious ones were even more fascinating to me.
Sure.
So anyways, fast forward, I kind of got recruited to the California Highway Patrol, and it made a lot more money. So I was like, well, I never really saw myself as a traffic cop. But I had a lot of friends that were in the Highway Patrol. So I started doing a lot of ride-alongs with them. And then I got hired. And then in 98, I went through the academy, and which is brutal, and then started my career in the California Highway Patrol. And that was when in California, the state police were absorbed by the California Highway Patrol. They were a separate entity in 1995. So right after I got, just before I got hired, there started becoming a more investigative component in the California Highway Patrol. So anyways, I went back to the same county where I worked as a sheriff's deputy, but with the California Highway Patrol, and started working with the district attorney's office gang task force.
Got it.
So now I was doing operational gang suppression in a very violent place, I could write a book just on that.
Yeah.
But and then it transcended. And then I worked in internal affairs. I actually started looking at gangs and law enforcement, looking at kind of issues like that.
Within the organization of law
and other
enforcement.
organizations.
So, okay.
So like the California Highway Patrol Internal Affairs actually looks into other like corrections.
Sure.
So that was kind of just a component of what I did. And then I started transcending the ranks. And I worked both in field operations and then some administrative assignments. And then 9/11 happened. So 9/11 happens. And then I was doing some work in corruption in the state of California, like undercover corruption stuff of state officials. And I started like, and another way to put it, I started becoming kind of a fixer. So my graduate school is in conflict resolution.
Yeah.
And so I started like becoming the guy that would go into certain difficult situations and be able to kind of fix them. Right. And so I kind of was fascinated by that too. And I spent a lot of time kind of working in that and teaching conflict resolution to new managers as well in the Highway Patrol. So I did that for about 10 years.
So fixer, not like, so solving problems,
solving
like
problems.
Wheels. Like
sometimes
not like undercover grease in the wheels.
Sometimes it's, you got to fire somebody. Sometimes it's more of a positive.
Okay.
So all that. And then, so fusion centers were created throughout the country. Post 9/11, and the federal government, the FBI, realized that they couldn't do it alone. And so joint terrorism task forces kind of existed, but then heightened with that. So that's where, whenever you hear the FBI taking down a terrorist, they're usually state and local police with the FBI working together in a cohesive way to be able to address terrorism. And then the fusion center side of it is, so every state has at least one fusion center. Texas has 8 or 9. I think California has 6 going, because they might have another one, to kind of look at threats and then move them to the particular agency that would need to address those threats. So if it's like, an Al-Qaeda threat, it's going to go to the FBI. That's their statutory requirement, is looking at terrorism in that realm. But anyway, so this is a 30-year story, but I retired as a chief of protective services, which is I was a division commander. So I had one of the smaller divisions, but I had all the highly technical aspects of, whether it's counterterrorism, making sure Newsom doesn't, get in trouble, the Capitol, judicial threat assessment, special operations, SWAT, all that stuff. So that's where I retired from. 2021, I had the unfortunate experience of being like the watch commander chief for the whole Highway Patrol. So I was dealing with protests, riots, and I was over our special response team stuff. So the only time I was out of the office dealing with just tremendous amount of information was in riots. So I would suit up like my guys and get out there and, do what we could to protect the people and also, protect society.
Crazy.
Yeah. That's like the 3-second, 10, 40 minute. I mean, each one of those things I could write a book about, but, so anyways, kind of fast forward to my fitness journey is,
then you moved to North Idaho. So
I moved to North Idaho.
All that stuff. And now you live.
Well, I saw what was happening, I'm another California refugee, but I saw what was happening behind the Iron Curtain, right? I mean, I knew the details, of what was happening in the state of California. I was in the Paradise Fire. That was a big deal for us. My realtor here actually lost his home in Paradise and worked for me.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, we were just ready to get out of California. I lived in Tahoe, as you know. I lived in North Tahoe for a number of years. I was the Truckee commander as well. Absolutely loved it.
How old are you? Jeez, man.
I'm only 52. I'm only 52. I've lived
15
like 16
lives.
lives. Yeah, I know.
That's awesome.
That's why I'm so nice, because I've seen so much bad too in the world. And
well, you could have taken it the other way. I mean, I
try to be nice.
Yeah, I think that happens too. I'm sure you've seen that with some. You know better than I do, but I feel like sometimes you see the. I was friends with a lot of law enforcement in Santa Barbara, and sometimes those guys are just lock up,
miserable,
move to the middle of nowhere, and never talk to anybody ever again.
Yeah, I feel sorry for those guys, and I talk to a lot of them that really struggle post their career.
Yeah,
it is a big challenge to like go for 30 years of hypervigilance and chaos to, okay, what do I do today?
Yeah.
You know, that can be really challenging for some people. So you either have healthy outlets or you have negative outlets.
Yeah. And you've seen all the worst of society, right?
For sure.
I mean, you've seen
there's
stuff.
some real evil out there.
Yeah. And so I can see how it happens. I can see how you
Right.
just say, well, screw it. I'm going to go.
Sure.
Whatever.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of people up here that are like that. A lot, there's tons of law enforcement folks that are like, I don't want to be bothered.
Yeah.
And there's also a health aspect to that too. Like being in nature and being able to revitalize yourself.
Yeah.
Is important.
Yeah. But you're so affable and jolly and joyful.
Yeah. I mean, I try.
maybe it's just so this.
My wife calls it glitter. I don't know. I don't know. She says I have a lot of glitter. And I'm like, I don't control this. Like, I don't know how I got here. I mean, I certainly have my down days, but one thing that I've realized, even just as important as the physiological aspect of exercise is for me, is like that really resets me. So when you see me in the gym, a lot of times it's just me dealing with my crap and getting through it. And I'm positive. Don't get me wrong. I'm always going to be positive in the gym as much as I can because I think it's important for that communal aspect. But that's really what helps me, whether I do some, and I don't just I did CrossFit, like went to Avalanche, as for a long time. And I think your gym is probably my 5th or 6th actual, strength and conditioning gym. No, but it's pretty close. So I have, and I actually knew about you guys well before I got here.
Really?
Yes.
From Tim?
From Tim. Yeah. So Tim moved out first, and then I was in contact with Tim, and I was like, okay, what's the gym like? And he goes, you're going to like it. You're going to love it. He goes, it's very similar to what you're used to.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. So anyways, that's what I do. I go, post retirement, I try to take care of myself as much as I can.
Yeah.
Whether it's strength and conditioning, whether it's working out, just all those things. I also do yoga too. Mm-hmm. I think all those I try to do as much as I can. Sometimes I work out 3 hours a day.
Yeah. Did you learn that was a good outlet for you? Like was that just inherent, or was that something you had to figure out?
I'd always been kind of athletic, excuse me. But, I think I realized, like, in just super stressful situations, if I went and worked out, especially like in the beginning of CrossFit and stuff like that. And I had other friends that were in that fusion center world that we would go around the country and work together, but we would go work out different gyms all around the country.
Yeah.
And so I got exposed to a lot of that. And it was the only place where I could just kind of disappear from that chaotic world for an hour and not think about anything else.
Yep.
To work out, and then just the endorphin build. And I would just feel so much better.
Yeah.
Being able to go to work and, be able to function at a different capacity.
Yeah.
Because, at that level, lives are on the line.
Sure.
And your decisions matter and it weighs on you.
Yep.
But that was an outlet for me, was just like getting in the gym, no matter how tired I was. Sometimes 5 o'clock in the morning for years.
Yeah.
Because that was the only time I could get in there and just, get through that.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people know that, but they don't execute on it. So that's cool. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I think there's some people that when they do it, they realize it's awesome, but dragging their asses out to go do the thing can be.
Sure.
So I think like understanding that reflex or response to it is, and then leaning into it and then actually doing it is not that common. So.
And it helped. I mean, like, in tactical situations, like I didn't want to be the leader that was the guy behind the scenes. That's not me. I was never in the command post, which I should have been probably. But I was always the guy that would, get into it.
Yeah.
And I didn't want my people to ever think that I couldn't do what they did. So that was a challenge, my own personal challenge to myself, to be, to have a physical aptitude to be able to address, whether I was a, desk jockey chief, but when it came down to business, I was, whether it was the campfire or probably spent 100 days of my career in riots or civil unrest or major natural disasters. I can't even, Trump and just all the things that came in the first election and just all the chaos in California.
Yeah. It was a wild time for sure. And before, I mean, even before that, I'm sure there was plenty to.
Sure.
Do you feel like that I think the like not moderating the intensity, but like knowing how to manage that helps with decision making under fire. Like,
For sure.
again, I've never done it near to that level, but the calmness under duress can be a massive asset for
Correct.
people to understand, hey, there's a lot going on physiologically. My heart rate's going crazy. I'm breathing hard. My pupils are dilated. I'm jacked up.
Yeah.
But doing that on a daily basis, I think helps. I would assume helps in your.
I think so. Like it addresses the cortisol, addresses the, adrenal fatigue, which, I definitely had. By the time I was done, I was just done. Like I knew I could retire at 50. And I'm still working, but not, I don't have 700 employees or whatever I had. And I'm not managing just chaos everywhere. I'm, now really able to focus on myself more.
Yeah.
And my family, which is important.
Yeah.
And knowing when to say when a lot of these guys that, like we talked about, that struggle when people get out of that, they can't do that. They just continue to, I got to be a reserve deputy, or nothing against it, but it's a young person sport.
Yeah. Is it a purpose driven thing? Like that's all they've ever
I think
known?
So. Yeah. I think I've had a lot of friends that like retired and then had to go back in because they just couldn't, they didn't feel like the importance of, or the challenge of these, and they usually kind of regret it because they get, tied up in the craziness and bureaucracy and politics of that world.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you scratch that itch by going back in the capacity that you're doing, or through the self-work?
No, I really, when I retired, I was like, man, I'm done. Like, and that's what we all say. I have no interest in being involved in law enforcement. I love the profession. I love the people that I worked with, most of them. But this company found me because of my background. And one of the things that I was over is post-pandemic, there was a highway violence surge in California. And so I was looking at technologies, and I heard about the company that I work for. And then they reached out to an old boss of mine, and they're like, yeah, you should talk to Stoney. And then they went to the East Coast, and I'm close to a lot of the New Jersey guys. And they're like, you should talk to Stoney. So they interviewed me, and they're like, and I had a big old beard. I'm like, I don't know if I fit this part anymore. I don't know if I can help you. I don't know what do I do? Like, I had my own business, but it was a kind of a different kind of a business. And, and it just happened organically. And then this company's just exploded. So I've never been part of the tech industry, until now. And, I'm not an employee, and I'm really there to just help state law enforcement and the company get to where they need to do to address crime, or usually major crime.
Yeah. That's we've chatted about that a bit offline. It's
been fun.
It's hard to comprehend for my little brain.
Whatever.
It's just a lot. It
is a lot.
It's new tech and new crazy kind of like iRobot stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is. I mean, technology is frightening, but it can be used for great things too.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't do something that I didn't believe in. And that's really what it is. It's not about the money, although it's nice because I have kids in, one kid in college and paying for Bay Area rent and stuff like that. But yeah, it's been good. And I think, kind of going back to what I said, like I had so much going on, and then to go from that to zero probably wouldn't have been the healthiest thing. Mm-hmm. If they said to me tomorrow, like, hey, we're done with you, Stoney, I'd be like, that was awesome. Thank you. It was fun. Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah. I was able to help some people and make a difference in people's lives.
Is that your purpose? Do you feel like? I mean, you started the conversation talking about how that's you got into law enforcement. It was like the want to help and protect and serve and do the thing.
Yeah, I think it's always a part of me, but there's also a big part of me that's like, I'm not the same as I was. I'm much more relaxed. I smile more, lost a lot of weight. I feel a lot better. So it's been a good balance for me, and I'm very blessed to have this, even though I wasn't looking for it. And in fact, today made it even better because I was like, that was probably the right move for me, is not going from 1,000 miles to zero, even though I was super tired.
Yeah. It's hard.
Yeah.
I experienced it for a short window at the gym. Like I just kind of hired my way out of a job, and I hated the lack of purpose. Like it's just weird to wake up every day and be like, I can do whatever I want. And I don't know what that is. So,
right. And then you're like, okay. And then you find other, like I know you're type A like myself, and you're finding these different niches and podcasts, things like that.
Full time.
Well, I think because you're, like bright people like to be stimulated, and not just sit there and look at the couch, and certainly not stare at the TV all day.
Yeah. But it can be hard. It can be really like, if you're used to something, like you said, like you acknowledge the 1,000 miles an hour, to go from that to nothing, and knowing that you are satisfied by by stimulus and input and,
Yes.
and having a purpose. If you don't know exactly what that is, it's really disconcerting.
Sure.
So
sure. And that's why you got to learn how to take care of yourself and have those healthy outlets, not just, crack open the bottle of whiskey, which has never been me, but, I struggle for people like that. I feel bad for people or, that really struggle with addiction, and it happens in every walk of life, whether it's alcohol or drugs or whatever they do. Especially people that have really served, like the veterans, and there's always going to be a soft spot for me for those types of folks that have been through trauma.
Yeah.
And then not know how to manage it, or they physically can't, they just can't.
Right.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that.
I can't say I get it, but I get it. Like as far as you look at people that are have the addictions or have the alcoholism, or whatever it is, like I get it. Like because it turns that brain off. It turns that voice off. It turns the brain off. It's just okay, cool. Like I got internal peace now. It's off. Cause I have, I think, been fortunate to understand, like through busyness and productive busyness, like projects and different things, like that's how I can turn that brain off.
Right.
Like if I'm busy, my brain's not.
That's addiction in itself, but it can be a positive one.
In a way.
And I think fitness is too. Like you got to have that. Like that's what, your gym provides me. And also, like I'll go ski or whatever. I like to have a lot of variety.
Yeah.
But that's what it is. It is a bit of like, you see a lot of people that have struggled in their life that are really making a difference and like working on themselves in the gym. Like there's a lot of those folks that really make just tremendous physical impacts and psychological impacts on themselves through something other than chemicals.
Yes. Yeah. Well, maybe endorphins. Maybe there's some internal chemicals.
Well, it is.
But yeah.
There's a big part of that.
Yeah.
I mean, you were there in the early gnarly CrossFit days when people just go at it, probably a little too far, but you'd have an incredible endorphin release from that too.
For sure. I've always thought of it as like some form. It's a physical form of meditation, or like an aggressive meditation.
I love that,
where you can't think about anything else.
Yes,
that was what jiu-jitsu was for me for a long time.
Yes,
like, well, I can't think about all my other stuff. I'm being strangled.
Right, survival mode. It is survival mode, right?
Yeah.
You're like, how bad is this going to be? And then even be able to deal with the stress inoculation side of that.
Yes,
and I found that very powerful, especially in tactical situations, like learning how to control breathing.
Yep.
And it's really not much different. Like if you go up and do 10 burpees and then go run and then, shoot. I mean, that's really interesting to me, and being able to kind of calm yourself down. If you're not in the best physical shape and you get into those high risk situations, you can really be challenged and you can really hurt yourself.
Yeah.
That's when people get hurt.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
You're right though. The ability to stay calm in that stuff is so, I don't know how many people listen to this that are not part of the gym or don't do other sort of like outlet. Like, I think it's so beneficial. Though.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know of anything there's some things that are real close, and I really respect people that do different sports. It might be hockey, it might be yoga, it might be whatever it is, but I think, especially in functional fitness, like it's next level. And it gives me that, like that space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it allows your brain. There's the voice that wants to panic and like, quit or, jiu-jitsu for me, it was like, you want to tap or you want to freak. You just kind of like go into survival freak out mode. That's so common as you start.
Sure.
But then as you get comfortable in it, you can like be super relaxed when some dude's got his knee on your sternum and trying to strangle you. And you're like, hey, well, this isn't that big a deal. Like it really transcends to everything else where, whatever else happens, you're like, well, I guess this is just what I'm dealing with now. It's not it's not that bad.
I love that centering of it though.
Yeah.
But that's a powerful thing that, people don't really always think. They know it happens. They know, and it's kind of like a child going to the playground for an hour. You're just having fun and also getting exercise in at the same time, but also finding that physiological or the psychological space too.
Yep. Yeah. It's just good. So
more
of that for the world somehow.
Right. But yeah, it's cool, like to see what you've done here in this small community. To me, it's very similar, as we've talked about this coming from Avalanche, which is a notorious CrossFit gym. And it was, for a long time, it was right behind my house. And so I got, those guys really kind of rebuilt me, really made me a better athlete, and, also crushed my ego a lot. And that was beneficial for me.
Yeah.
Of like, really doing a squat really getting low enough as a big guy. And also know my limitations as a bigger person, you know, has been a great thing for me. And then just kind of like coming here when I moved to Sandpoint, I felt like home the minute I was there.
Oh, that's
like
awesome.
I really did. And I like the facility. Like it can't be too perfect. It's like the perfect place. Like it's got to be a little gritty. Gyms aren't like, I don't like the Hollywood boutique gyms. It's not really my thing. So I like the kind of roughness of it, but also you have a great community here. The coaches are all absolutely great. I work out with some of them, and they're all just beautiful people and also different. And I've been to a lot of gyms to say that like there's always one person I was like, I don't know about where this is going. But I don't see that in your gym.
I was going to say I was going to make you out the one if you had one.
No. I'm like my first. I've never had an interview come into a gym, and it was with Lisa, and she's like just perfect person, and just she's like, okay, you're psycho, you're gonna fit right in. No. But like just everybody is just so accommodating and skilled in their own way, and I like having the exposure to all of them. I don't, I like having everybody's experience and learning from each one of them.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
I agree. I don't know how it happened, but it's now at this point it's really neat. I'm very fortunate. Like I think about my staff meetings now, and I just look around. I'm like, this is amazing. Like this is what I dreamt about 13 years ago.
That's not easy to find. It honestly, it's a rarity.
Yeah, I know.
In the gym world, right?
Yeah, and it's been an evolution. It's not always said it's not been that way. I've had my Rufio draw a line in the sand. This is how we're going to move forward with things. And if you're on this side, great. If you're on the other side, that's fine too. But yeah. So it's been a work in progress. Right. It's been a journey to get here. But yeah, we are super fortunate to have the people that we do, but also the community too. I mean, that's a whole other.
Well, and that's what I love is like, and I think you and I've talked about this before, but like in the CrossFit days, it was like these meatheads, a little bit of the meathead kind of thing. And I worked in gyms, back in the day that were meathead gyms. And it was kind of like this rogue clandestine thing. And now you look at the evolution of functional fitness, and it's much more for the masses, right? The competition is the couch. And I love seeing, honestly, the competitors, there are not as many of them anymore. And I appreciate that. And I think it's cool. But what I really like to see is people starting out and just watching this phenomenal growth in these people. And it's cool to see that. Yeah. And I'm just like, I love to just talk to people and give them, like some motivation to like, man, like even if I don't know them or, if they're, overweight or elderly or whatever. And I'm like, man, you really did amaze me, like what you're doing. And that's just so beautiful to see and powerful. Yeah.
Totally. I 100% agree. And we definitely have a smaller CrossFit, like competitive contingent. I think that's pretty universal amongst most gyms, but the ones that we do have are very growth oriented. Like they have the growth mindset of they wanted to get better and they want to develop, and it's about their improvement, not their like the pissing contest between who they're better than or not. And I think how that's different from some of the competitors that we lost, it was they were in it to smash on people and who didn't come in as good as them, and they just like to kind of like show off they like to beat their chest a little bit. And it's like, well, you're not really getting any better. You're just kind of squashing the others. And that's not it. If you're here to get better and you want to compete and that's your expression of your own personal growth, then that's fantastic. Yes. I'm in. Yeah. It's just different in that way for us. But I am the same. Like the people who are getting off the couch and starting are so much more, I don't know that they're more inspirational, but I'm much more impressed by that person who would like had never done anything that we're doing and they're doing an empty barbell for the first time than this person who walked in able to squat 400 pounds and they're squatting 400 pounds. I'm like, well, that's like what you can do. Like, cool.
You're just substantiating. Cool. Yeah. You're just, right. No, I agree. And like even the kids that I'm so glad that they have this, that we didn't have. Right. We had like, go figure out the gym. Yep. And same. It was like, okay. And then half the people do it wrong and no one really cares. Right. This kind of movement. And actually I really wanted to be, in coming from the CrossFit world and having exposure to different CrossFit gyms that I belong to, I loved it for that time. But I also really wanted to be part of a strength and conditioning gym because I think you have so much more of a paradigm of things that you can kind of introduce, and it's not so much dogma related, right? Like and that's what I see in our gym and your gym is just this opportunity to kind of really mix it up in a way that's safe and practical and beneficial.
Yeah.
More than just, which CrossFit WOD are we doing today?
Totally. Yeah. I said that to a woman last night, actually. She came in, she just walked in off the street and wanted to chat. And she's like, I've been a part of other CrossFit gyms. Like, I'm like, well, like that's still going to look like a lot of what we're doing, but like I can always tell you why we're doing something according to every other thing I've been exposed to. Like,
sure.
Whether it's weightlifting or conditioning specific stuff or nutrition or I don't know, whatever it is. Like I think trying to bring that, which was one of the things I actually loved about CrossFit in the beginning, was that it felt like we're going to take from all these things and then use that in a way that we can bring entertaining fitness to the masses. But I do feel like there was a lot of dogma. Like it was like, well, CrossFit says this, so we're going to do this. I'm like, well, why? Can we talk about the exercise physiology or what this actually means? Because I see what you're trying to do, but it doesn't make any sense. Here's how it could make a little bit. Yeah. So anyways, I think I really appreciate you saying that, because that is, I think, the perspective I would like.
No, I love that. And I love that. And that's really, it was, and you can kind of see that like in the evolution of CrossFit too. A lot of gyms became strength and conditioning gyms or went different directions, or people went to Orange Theory or whatever. And it's fine. Whatever, works for you.
Yeah.
They're all great in their own little way. But for me, this is exactly what I was looking for.
I paid you to say that.
I know.
You don't have to.
Thanks. I'll take the money later. I'll take the money later.
But it's been that's been an interesting thing. Again, I work with so many gyms and I get exposure to so many other gyms.
Right.
And I think it's moving that direction and positively, where there's more why behind it and more emphasis on long-term. Like, let's keep people doing this for 50 years.
Yeah. Longevity.
Yeah. So,
I mean, I'm not a youngster. I'm 52, and I try to, beat up 30-year-olds every now and then just for my own ego's sake. No, just kidding. But I really appreciate it. And I can see that you've invested a lot of time, like with your structure of the gym, looking at that. And most people, they become part of something. They go, this is the only way to go.
Yeah.
And so I know that you invest in yourself and a lot of continuing education to kind of get there and bring that philosophy into the gym, and you sense it as a member.
Yeah, good. Thanks. And I think that back to the coaches, like that, their buy-in to that has been so demonstrative in that evolution, because that's not always the case. Sometimes people come in, they're like, well, CrossFit this, or this is my perspective. And so I can't say how much I appreciate their ability to be like, okay, well, let's just trust him.
Right.
see what kind of wacky stuff he wants to try and have us do now.
Right.
So, and I'm not always right. I'm most often wrong.
Well, and I think that's, part of the success of it is, a lot of these CrossFits went away.
Yeah.
With the pandemic or whatever, or they just became stagnant.
Yeah.
And like, you can still see there's like this upward trajectory with what you're doing.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. That's the only nice thing I usually say to you. I don't usually say nice things.
Yeah, you're with your sweet
I like negative.
I'm going to listen to this every night before I go to bed.
I do that as long as I can, whisper sweet nothings to you and put you out. If you want to, like, if anybody's listening to this podcast going to sleep, I hope you sleep well.
You're with your glitter.
With my glitter. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
You've lost some weight too.
I did lose some weight.
How much?
At the end of my career, I was probably, and I've been everywhere from 220 to 300 pounds. And then when I moved here, I was like, I could really focus on diet. For a while, I was a vegetarian. I've been a pescatarian. And I struggled with that. And then, as I told you, my old coach, Miles Lewis, who's the owner of Avalanche CrossFit, was a huge carnivore guy. And I was like, I don't know, it sounds, and then my daughter was getting married last summer and I was the officiant. And my wife's like, I want to do this carnivore thing. And I was like, okay, like it sounds like, let's do it. Like, I'll try anything. And I, last winter, I think I lost 50 pounds.
Yeah.
Almost 60 pounds.
Every time I saw you, it felt like you lost a dress size.
It was definitely an interesting thing. And then just kind of learning how you're affected by carbohydrates. And, I don't bag. I think a natural food diet is really the way to go. I'm not like one of those people like philosophically opposed to whatever people do if it works for them. I think people are different. Yep. For me, being kind of ketovore, as they say, or more carnivore based, I went off of it and I was fine. I gained a little bit of weight back, but and now I'm kind of more in the carnivore. But I also introduce a little more things. I'm a little more liberal with myself. But just realizing how addicted we are to carbohydrates, and especially just the normal food that most people buy.
Yeah.
And then getting really focused on natural food, good quality meats, good quality vegetables, I think is the way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or going strictly carnivore. Some people, I think vegetarian is a struggle. For me, I gained weight as a vegetarian.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to eat, things that were satiating.
Yeah.
And there wasn't any.
Yeah.
So then that was a challenge for me. And so, yeah, I mean, and my father, who's 85, is like the full carnivore and always has been. And he's, physically great.
Yeah. What are you doing now compared to like full blown carnivore?
I just kind of my wife wanted to go back to carnivore, but she's challenged with, cause like she's, we're all addicted to our vices. As far as food, right? Talk about addicting things. I would say that I'm more carnivore based, but I will also I'm more like I'll, eat macadamia nuts. I eat avocados. I eat cheese. I'm not once again, I'm not so focused on the dogma of it, but what is going to provide me the energy to do what I do.
Yes.
And one of the things I loved about carnivore is just that I was never hungry. I was always so protein satiated.
Yeah.
And there's people that are against it. I got really into Dr. Sean Baker, who's a similar size as me. He's, the world record holder with the C2 500, doing a row like the guys, and he's 56. So he's older than me and he looks phenomenal. Or Mark Bell.
Yeah.
I worked out with Mark Bell when he did a clinic one time at Blizzard, which was connected to Avalanche Gym at the time. And he was huge. He was massive. Yep. Of course he was openly about his use of gear and all that stuff, which I was never into. But, watching him transform now, you look at him, he's like 200 some odd pounds and he's a freak. I mean, just looks incredible. So there's something to, I think, people always sit there and talk, well, carnivore is bad or, vegetarians are bad, but it's all the processed crap.
Yeah.
And if you can eliminate that the best you can.
Yeah.
And I think you're in great shape. And people, this is the sugar addiction, or alcohol addiction. Cause I look at alcohol like sugar.
Yep.
Is really causes a lot of health issues for most people like that. You look at you look at what's happening in the White House and you look at the, not that I'm some dogma guy, but RFK really looking at what we, giving, for example, diabetics maltodextrin, things like that. Like, I'm like, why is that a good idea to give them some simple, super synthetic carbohydrate, and that's good for somebody. And, a lot of those folks, not all of them, if they had a natural food diet and that was what was promoted in their life, they probably wouldn't be there. Or, sometimes, or they could help address their issues with that.
Right.
Or have a much more, not have as much medication or what have you.
Right. Totally. Yeah. I think that I'm on the same page with the dogma thing as we talked about with fitness, with nutrition. Like, I think there's merit to a lot of it. I think if you can conglomerate it into a way that comes back to like paleo, like I really think paleo is a really good, like, I think that's still a pretty good way to go.
Sure.
Just natural food, like chop on the exterior.
Yeah.
And just eat stuff that nobody's touched.
Right.
And
I mean, it's shocking when you look at people in the 50s and now you look at people, just go to Orlando. Just, I mean, you see it, like, that's what's cool about living in a community like we live in here is like, if you're an outdoors person, whether you're hunting, like you love to hunt, or you're out skiing or whatever, and you're living this kind of like or you're just going to sit inside and blow up. You got to have these outlets that really, they work together to be, have a good physicality for your ability.
Yep.
I think that's important. And diet's a huge aspect of that. You see people that work out and, eat crap, which is easy to do. I mean, it stimulates your brain, and the things that are coming out about these companies that are literally looking for brain stimulation and food products.
Yeah.
More than what, which is just scary. And then people end up on pharmaceuticals to address it. And that's not, in my opinion, not the way to go. I think it's physical activity. You could be a swimmer. That's great. If you're a runner, that's great.
Yep.
Yeah,
I think it's the perspective that's being brought forward more and more and more is the preventative nature of health and wellness through nutrition and fitness.
Sure.
And like that, it's not that anybody that I'm paying attention to is against medicine.
Right.
Because there's a time and a place for
Absolutely.
it. Of course. We're not going to I don't know, put leeches on people to try and cure them of disease. But the preventative nature of just eating whole foods and working out every day, like that goes 90% of the way there. And if you need pharmaceuticals because of a condition, that's great. Like, do that.
Yeah.
We're not all against medicine, but the fact that this country's never been fatter, sicker, or less healthy, despite the amount of information and accessibility to fitness and gyms and nutrition, like it's a sad state of affairs.
It is. And it's sad, especially, people that, don't have the economic ability to eat healthy because it costs more. Mm-hmm. It does to have natural whole foods, which it shouldn't be that way. It's weird that processed food costs more or it costs less. And, you just look at like these people that are brought up into the Dorito Mountain Dew world.
Yep.
And how do they come out of that?
Yeah.
And I think fitness is a big aspect of that. Like if they can make that jump.
Yeah.
And get into it might not be the most exciting when you're eating and you're like, okay, but the variety, you can find things and but not just pick up a bag of Doritos off of, and just fire it down.
Yeah. I think a lot of it comes back to the addiction thing in a way that if somebody's an addict, like they don't keep that in their house. Like if you're addicted to alcohol or whatever it is, like you probably don't keep a bunch of booze in your house.
Right.
I would think that'd be really hard, but with food, like you have to eat or you're going to die.
Yeah.
And so people tend to keep these things in their homes and then assume that their self-control will keep them away from it. And that's impossible. Like, it's just impossible. I don't have a lot of self-control other than being proactive in what we purchase in the store.
Sure.
And so again, if it's in my house, I'm going to eat it.
Like I'm the same way.
Yeah.
I'm the same way. I have like, it gets late and like, that's why I just don't buy that crap. I don't go down those aisles.
Totally. Yeah, exactly.
As my friend Miles would say, he goes, you shop on the outside of the grocery store, not the middle.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Cause if it's here, I'm eating it. Like when Garrison was younger and he'd have whatever.
Kids are hard because
cereal and this. I'm like, dude, heck yeah.
Here's your lettuce.
Having some cinnamon toast crunch today. I feel terrible.
I feel terrible, but like it's, and it's weird how they have created that stuff to stimulate you.
Yeah, I know.
Which is devious.
It is. And I wonder how much people are just used to feeling a certain way. And so they don't know how good they'd feel if they didn't.
Right.
But also the addiction thing, it's hard to kick.
It is. I mean, food addiction is probably, we never talk about it, but it's probably the worst thing there is. There's all these other addictions that are just awful. The drug crisis and epidemic and it's worse than it's ever been.
Yep.
Yeah. But food is like, look at that. And then how do we steer people to a healthier lifestyle,
It's hard. How did you feel when you went carnivore? When you stopped eating carbohydrates and sugar, how'd you feel?
The first 2 weeks, and I heard somebody say it, and I felt like crap the first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And some people call it the keto flu or whatever. And then what someone said, and I was like, that is exactly what I felt. I was kicking, like kicking dope.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I was releasing like this carbohydrate dependency.
Yep.
And I felt like I was, removing this addiction from me.
Yeah.
And so, that was, I did feel that. And my wife didn't. She never felt that way, but I felt like crap the first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then when I learned, my body kind of learned how to, burn fat and to, not be as hungry and not have that need because that food, creates a desire to eat more.
Yep.
And then losing that has been great because I have no real I go, that piece of whatever looks really good. I could eat it, but I don't need it.
Yeah.
And so that moved my body into a physiological space where I don't require that. And if I do have like a strong urge for something, I'm going to have heavy cream in my coffee.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or have a protein shake that, you know, is less processed and more, you know, carnivore based.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah. You mentioned the physiological, but we talked about the psychological ability to tolerate duress. And I think that is this, like, the carnivore, keto, intermittent fasting, even like some of those experiments with yourself, to not that you necessarily have to adhere to it forever, but I've done a variety of all of those things. And I think that you understand the psychology of, it's not that, like, I'm hungry.
Right.
It's not that big a deal. Like, I can get through this. And then you've turned off, like, I did intermittent fasting for a long time.
I love intermittent fasting.
I was responding to cues more than I was hunger.
Right.
And so it was like this, I'm hungry, I don't have to eat, I'll be fine. And even though I don't really do that now, like, I can go for a really long time without eating, just because I've turned that part of my psychology off, where it's like, oh, I'll just eat when I can.
And I think carnivore pushed me there too.
I bet.
Like, and then I was like, you know, I think I did a 1 or 2 7, like maybe a few 40-hour fast, 70-hour fast.
Yeah.
You know, obviously working out, you got to be careful. You don't want to overdo it.
Right.
You got to let yourself not do maybe as much, but continue to work out.
Yeah.
And then have, you know, electrolytes is a big aspect too. Like, I don't feel right unless I'm taking enough electrolytes, especially eating that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting thing, and it's hard for people to kind of conceptualize it, but I think there's a tremendous health benefits. I mean, historically, from fasting, and, you know, ground you.
And just controlling your damn brain.
Right.
Hey,
shut
the
up. Monkey mind. We're all, and we're all victims of that too. It's not like, man, a pizza really sounds incredible, you know, like, and then you eat it and then you feel like crap.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
You enjoy it when you're doing it.
Oh yeah.
But
for sure.
And I also think, you know, like, if you're so, like, we were talking a little bit about dogma, but being so focused on one way of eating is also probably not the best.
Yeah.
You got to, you know, and I think eliminating a lot of these things, you know, in the carnivore, and I'm no expert, but a lot of people talk about, like, the elimination of, like, I didn't know that a lot of vegetables were inflammatory, and kind of learning what those are. Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
Like, I had no idea.
Just the self-experimentation on it to see, because a lot of people react differently to that too.
Right.
So seeing what, an elimination diet to see how you feel.
Right. And what works for you, or what, you know, could be completely different. So you kind of have to explore these different arenas.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's fun.
It is fun. It's hard, but it's fun. It's like but I feel good. I feel, you know, I'm not the youngest guy in the world, but I feel, you know, I feel better than I did 10 years ago, 20 years ago, for sure.
That's awesome. That's not that's pretty rare.
Yeah.
A lot of people say 50, they're hanging it up. 40, they're hanging it up.
Which I think you're just starting.
Totally.
You know? I think you're just starting. Like, yeah, it's a different journey, and you got to be, maybe, you know, if you live in that ego world a little bit too much and you go, well, this is what I could do when I was 19 years old.
Yeah.
Probably not. But, you know, and I think mobility is a huge aspect of that too. Like, a lot of, you know, you see people that are suffering, elderly, you know, and it's not all we all get there, you know, we suffer with our mobility, but being able to, like, what your gym does, or doing some mobility or stretching, yoga, whatever. I think that, like, I can go do a yoga, you know, and, in my old gym used to do this. We had kind of a restorative, it was really like yoga for CrossFitters. So it was like, we were talking trash the whole time, and stretching.
Yeah, sure.
Right. But you get into these long stretches, and I would notice that my strength would increase the next week. Yeah. And that's been something that I also work on. So I try to, like, the yin and yang of working out, the high intensity. I love it. Yep. I mean, that's definitely what I prefer. I don't, you know, yoga is like a struggle, you know, I'm a Neanderthal doing yoga, right? But I also value the benefit of it, and I can do it in the same day because they're so different. Correct. You know what I mean? So I can extend or I'll go for a hike or whatever, but then being able to stretch, like running, I used to struggle with mobility because it was so repetitive. And that's kind of how I got into functional fitness. As my chiropractor owned a gym, a CrossFit gym, and just opened it. And he's like, you really should. And I was running, I got hurt. And I would run marathons at the Clydesdales division. You had to be over 220. It used to be a division. I know. No, I know. And I used to run them.
I know. I was in that.
And I ran like half marathons and full marathons. And I got hurt and hurt my foot. And so he fixed me, and he's like, you should really come do this. I'm like, I don't want to do that. And then I did it, and I was like, man, I'm out of shape. like, I just don't have this mobility. I don't have what I want. Being a competitive athlete before, I was like, man, and then I just fell into it. And then I haven't stopped, and it's been, I don't know, 15 years.
That's such an awesome response to that, though. I see so many people who get uncomfortable in that. They're like, I'm out of shape and I got to stop because it's uncomfortable. It's the ego thing. Their ego gets a massive hit.
Sure.
I thought I was in great shape. I was a runner. I was a this or that. And they're trying something new. And it's I'm sure some people just don't like it, but I think there's some people who are just disappointed by themselves and just refuse to look in the mirror in that way.
Right.
And just quit or just don't ever start.
Right. But then you see, like, and I like being a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And growing from that.
Yeah.
And that was beautiful, because once I got into it, it was like, oh my God. And it was like, this is great. And I did some competition stuff, which I probably had no business doing. Cause I'm not like the typical size build for at that time in the CrossFit world. But, and I was luckily, because of where I was working out, and I was actually a member of 2 different gyms, having some regional competitors and games competitors around, to see what they were going through.
Yeah.
Helped me grow.
Yeah.
And to see that, and not from a competitor, I really didn't have any interest in being a competitor, but it was just to, like, what's the best version of myself that I can do? And, can I go cut wood tomorrow?
Yeah.
Or, whatever it was, dig snow out. Living in Tahoe was a lot of digging. So I moved here for less snow.
Yeah. Really?
So, yeah.
How's that work? Actually, this year it's working out nice.
Well, I think, and it's funny because I would ask Tim all these things. He's like, I feel better, lower altitude. We have snow here, and and I'm not saying it's can't be crazy next year, but
yeah,
living at almost 7,000 feet and working out at that level.
Oh yeah.
Like, we would get 5 feet, dig it out, and then another 5 feet, and, dig out your roof. That's snow living.
Yeah.
So, like, living here is nice. I mean, of course we have more, like, I have more room. I have 10 acres. So
right.
It's a different challenge. Right.
Yeah.
But I like all that.
We have less bears too.
We do have less bears. You're not breaking into your house all the time. Like,
I'd like to take responsibility for that.
I think you're definitely managing the population, and maybe that's what's given them some sense, maybe not to go to some places.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. You're welcome.
I appreciate it. Yeah. Living in Tahoe is like, it would bears all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Like, you'd wake, like, when you take your trash out, you're like, they know it's trash day.
I giggle about it a lot. I still have friends down there.
Well, they're too protected. I mean, it's great. I mean, I love bears.
Yeah.
They're very smart critters. But at the same time, there's that confluence of people.
Yes.
And too many damn people there.
Yeah.
That's, part of it. Why I like it here is just quieter.
Yeah.
But here they know better.
Yeah.
They're smarter than most tourists. It's true. Bears.
Yes.
I've learned that.
Yes, definitely.
They're definitely sentient, smart beings.
They are. I love bears to death. I really do. No pun intended. But I could watch them and learn about them. And I get debates about this, but I know more about bears, and I want to protect more bears than anybody
absolutely.
I know.
Well, I think that's what's great about hunters. Like, the misconception, no one cares more about wildlife than hunters, and gives more back to wildlife.
Yes.
And protects land than hunters.
Yeah, it's true.
You know what I mean? I mean, we can't go crazy, and, poachers are bad.
Yep.
And things like that. But at the same time, it's a balance.
Yeah. For sure. Sweet, man. We covered some ground, and I think I could do this for hours and hours.
We went all over the board.
I could just explore the last 30 years of your life for a couple more hours.
I could put you to sleep. I'm going
to call you tonight.
I'm here for you.
Will you tell me some stories?
Sure.
Glitter?
Sure. Yeah, glitter. That's what my wife says.
I love it.
Laura.
I'm glad we outed this. I'm glad we put this out there. Stoney's going to be glitter now.
That's fine.
John Aspinwall is going to have a field day with this.
Bring it.
Unfortunately,
I'll rip him apart.
We'll put this on a vinyl.
Can't wait till he comes back so I can say
album.
some more negative things when he's working out.
So he's back in 3 weeks.
I can't wait.
I'll have to have him on here.
Yeah. Well, we could really just have a negative reinforcement discussion if you want. Like,
that's a good idea.
Talk about the benefits of negative reinforcement.
Yeah. We should have him here and just not give him a microphone.
Maybe just talk trash to him and just let him sit here and watch.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
I think this is good.
That's a good idea. I'm in. Anytime.
All right, man. Well, thanks
for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Do it again.
All right.